and says, papers, please. Boy, what does that remind us of? And they don't produce the papers. Can they just say, okay, come with me. We'll sort it out later. What were they thinking? And again, this case, because of who she is getting national attention. But how many other cases are going on where there is no such national attention? So the director of immigration at the Cato Institute, which is a libertarian think tank, posted on X today that there are internal checkpoints. We're not talking about within the 100-mile limit of the border. Internal checkpoints in the United States that they outsource to the various state police agencies where people are stopped and checked for their immigration status. This means that you and I could be stopped and we could be questioned.
No, baby.
And if they suspect that we are not in the country legally, they can detain us. This is, from all my understanding of the law and the court decisions, not legal, but it's done anyways, apparently, according to the Cato Institute. But here we go. And the courts did rule in favor of some of the ICE operations. They were challenged for what they do at MacArthur Park in Los Angeles, because there are a lot of illegal immigrants that hang out at the park. And from my understanding, I've been in MacArthur Park. I haven't been there in years, but I have been in MacArthur Park. But as I understand, there are a lot of miscreants that hang out in MacArthur Park. But I think that's a LAPD issue. But at any rate, they'll come through MacArthur Park and they'll just round up everybody, bring them in, and then try to determine later whether they are immigrants or not. Illegal immigrants or not. Well, that's a fishing expedition. They're not allowed, according to court decisions, to make fishing expeditions, but in the case specifically of MacArthur Park, when it was challenged, the court ruled it is permissible. This is an erosion of freedoms, I believe, notwithstanding the fact that many people believe that our immigration policies were lax, and this is absolutely necessary for the betterment of the nation. Notwithstanding that, it means that you or I could be swept up. My ex-wife, she was born in the United States. She's Mexican. Anybody in her family, including my children who are half Mexican, theoretically could be picked up because they look like maybe they're not here legally. So, interestingly, as a result of what the Cato Institute tweeted out today, I went to their website to see if they had more on this issue. And as it turns out, they believe, this is a Cato libertarian viewpoint of it, that in the aggregate, all of this immigration stuff is positive for the nation. In the aggregate. Now, I know every time an illegal alien commits a heinous crime, it's a headline. And we are quick to say in my business, an illegal immigrant committed this heinous crime. We don't point out when a heinous crime is committed by a naturally born American citizen, that a naturally born American citizen committed the crime. The argument being, well, yeah, that's true, but if the illegal immigrant hadn't come into the country in the first place, he wouldn't have committed the crime that he did that we're talking about today, and that's true. That's true. Anyways, according to Cato, and let's throw this out into the mix. Asylum entries are down 99.9%. Student visas, family visas, and H-1B applications have all cratered. The Cato Institute concludes that the president's executive actions have blocked far more legal immigrants than illegal ones. And they say that the president's stated support for legal immigration does not match his policy record. They also talk here about the economic benefit of birthright citizenship, which of course is an important issue for us to consider today as well, given the Supreme Court decision. The Labor Department, they say, has inflated H-1B wages to force out skilled foreign workers. It says that Department of Homeland Security has quit granting green cards almost entirely. It says that people come into the United States to train as physicians on student visas, and then after we train them as physicians, the U.S. policy forces them to leave. This is not my argumentation. I'm just saying I stumbled across this as a result of the tweet that went out today by the Cato Institute. Whether you embrace their philosophy of libertarianism or not, they have a pretty good record of backing up their argumentation with facts. Now, in these cases, I have not gone back personally to vet out whether what they are stating on their website today is accurate or inaccurate, but I find it extremely interesting in the context of today's discussion, and that's why I present it to you. So with that, I will start calling people in the order which I see them on the stage, and I'm glad that the order begins with Marshall, who's right there in the McAllen area and knows the intimate details of this poor nun being held for 24 hours, even though she's legally a resident of the United States of America. Marshall.
Hey, Gary. Sad day. I don't think very many people knew that we had internal checkpoints, but we've had checkpoints at the two major highways. The two highways that are out of here called 281 and 77, and they each have a checkpoint, internal checkpoint on them. And there's been arguments my entire life that says these things are a combination of both illegal and unconstitutional. I put more stock in the unconstitutional than the illegal, because I've never been able to find a piece of federal code that says it's illegal. The sister Letty Boja, I think that's how you say her name, as soon as she was detained and word went out, all three Valley Congress people, two Democrats and one Republican. The Democrats were Henry Cuellar and Vicente Gonzalez. Henry Cuellar represents District 28, Vicente Gonzalez represents District 34, and Monica Cruz, who is the congresswoman I'm working for, represents Congressional District 15. All three went out of their way as soon as they heard to get her out. And the only thought I've had on this for the last couple of hours is, this is what happens when you run fast and break things. You catch people who shouldn't be caught in the first place. Instead of, what's the saying, Gary? You can have it fast, easy, or done right, but you have to choose between the two. I'm forgetting how that saying goes. But in order to administer this in the correct way, it needs to not be run fast and break things, which is what the administration is doing. And I'd be willing to bet you all the meager amount of money and possessions I have, Stephen Miller was the person who was responsible for this in terms of advice. Instead of Tom Holman, who wanted to be Obama administration or the Biden administration was able to administer immigration services in a way where they did not result in nuns getting caught up who were American citizens, didn't result in religious people getting caught up who were American citizens. They did it slowly and they did it properly. They didn't do it fast. And I think one of the lessons we have to take away here is this is what happens when you do things fast and you run fast and break things. You end up catching people that shouldn't be caught up. And there is something seriously wrong with running fast and breaking things when it comes to actual people getting detained. Aside from the fact that she was a Catholic nun and a sister and deserved more than she got, this is how the administration has been acting. And I don't think there's another way to preface it or to say anything other than that the administration has decided that they would rather do things fast and do things effectively. They would not prefer to do them the right way. I'm not saying they don't do some things the right way. I'm not saying, in a couple of cases they don't get them right. What I am saying is that when you run fast and break things, people like this sister are the folks that get caught up. And that's just not right. So I'll leave it there for people that have extra questions. If you'd like me to go through and read the statements from all three of the congressmen, I will. I just didn't figure you'd want me to read the press releases. So I'm just more giving my opinion than anything else. I know Sister Norma Pimentel, along with the congresswoman and two congressmen, were instrumental in getting the sister out of detention. But this is just wrong. I don't think there's another way to say it. It's just wrong.
So, your comments there, Marshall, and I appreciate that input, lead me back to something that I said in the opening salvo, and that is, well, if it happened to her, we're hearing about it because of her stature in the community. How many other people is this kind of thing happening to? What is your sense?
Happened to a bunch of happened to three mariachis from Manakaw, my high school. They got detained, and it took 2 or 3 weeks to get them out of detention. This has happened to at least 3 other Valley residents who are U.S. citizens or permanent residents. The only thing I can take away from this is, again, this is what happens when you run fast and break things. When the administration is more interested in shoveling out as many people as they possibly can, as quickly as they possibly can, you are going to wind up in a place where you make mistakes. And this, to say it in the politest form possible, was a mistake. I personally, it appears malicious to me. I often think the explanation for things getting screwed up is stupidity rather than maliciousness. But this seems malicious. To lock a nun up, along with the other people that have been locked up, the administration just does not seem to care about doing this the right way. They simply want to answer the campaign promise that people need to be gone. And if the majority of people in my party want them gone more than they want things done the right way, then they're not going to be critical of this because, oh well, she got caught up, but we have to get other people too. And I personally am in the camp of, you do it correctly. You don't just speed. So this happened, like I said, to at least 3 other Valley residents, and at least 2 high school kids who were on the mariachi team and who didn't deserve to be caught up in the first place. But because the administration wants to run fast and break things, this is what happens.
Were those kids targeted because they play in the mariachi band?
Oh, no, not that I'm aware of, and not that any of the congressmen that helped them were aware of. But they were in the mariachi band, and when I went to school, when I went to high school, we had at least a quarter of the students coming over from Reynosa every day, our sister city, and you know, granted they lived in Mexico, so legally they're not allowed to go to school in the United States. But they had an uncle or somebody else who lived here. And typically, they would just list the uncle's address, and they would be able to come in and get education, which I never particularly minded and still don't mind. But there are people that come back and forth between Mexico to go to Valley High schools every day of the week, and I don't exactly know how the mariachis got caught up, but something happened and they got put in detention for 3 weeks. And it's just a travesty. Like I said, this is what happens when you run fast and break things. You don't do things the right way. I mean, I'll end with this. Do you know the saying I was talking about? You get it fast, easy, or correct? Something like that?
Well, you said it fine in your own words. I don't think we need to try to look up a saying. You said it just fine in your own words.
But I think that's what happens when you try to do it fast and easy instead of easy and correctly. Right? That you wind up with these sorts of issues, which are just not, they're running roughshod over civil protections for people. And the problem is, the next president of the United States will have the ability to use these precedents to do even more. As I always complain about presidential power, this is just providing a precedent for another president who would like to do something similar. Maybe it's not to the folks who live where I live. Maybe it's to Polish people. Probably not, but you get the point. It's just to other people. And we should, as a population, zealously guard our civil protections. And the administration, for whatever reason, with Stephen Miller's help, I call Stephen Miller Voldemort, but that's just me, they have decided that it's okay to do it this way. And it's just, there's no other way to state it other than this is just wrong. It's just morally wrong to do what they're doing.
Thank you, Marshall. We'll go to Scott, followed by Pat.
So I'm getting what I'm getting from that discourse that Marshall just shared is that he doesn't run with scissors in his house. So, and I think that's excellent. Safety first, I always say. And I agree with Marshall. You can do things well, you can do them fast, and many a woman has said that to me. But regarding the policies, and so I don't have a lot to say other than I largely agree with what Marshall said in terms of the sort of ham-handedness which comes from attempting to reach these goals, these crazy deportation goals, which were set, I believe, by Stephen Miller. Now, Stephen Miller said that he wants 3,000 arrests per day, which would be an official deportation target of 1 million a year. Now, to give some context to this, and to try to get a sense of just what that number means, Obama was called deporter-in-chief when he was president, and a lot of the left found that problematic, right? Obama did not have friends on the left regarding two issues, immigration and education. Arnie Duncan, his education secretary, was not popular for the reforms that he advocated on the left, and Obama was not popular, again, with many folks on the left because of his zealous deportation practices. Now, at the zenith of Obama's deportation, which occurred in 2012, from 2009 to 2016, he deported 2.7 million folks. That's over 2 terms. Logging an average of 343,000 deportations over the course of this term. His highest was 409,000 deportations in 2012. So that gives you a sense. The deporter-in-chief 1 year got to 409,000. Miller wants to more than double that. Okay, and I think exactly what Marshall's saying. If you have these zealous, I think, unrealistic goals, you're just going to start locking up nuns. Like anybody brown, anybody black, anybody that looks like they can tolerate a hot tamale or fire sauce at Taco Bell. Lock them up, right? I mean, this is what's going to happen. Right? So, I mean, I just think that these goals are insane. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Marshall's right. I think Miller is I mean, ultimately Trump is responsible for anything in this administration, but I think Marshall's right. I think Miller is driving the train here, and this million-person goal is what is largely leading to the ham-handedness and crazy detentions and deportations. I mean, this is crazy, and I think again the benchmark is what's to blame in part. Thanks.
Benchmark. Goals. Come on. Use the right words, Scott. They're quotas.
They are quotas, yeah. They are quotas, yeah, absolutely.
The other thing is, Stephen Miller versus Holman coming up with the quotas and the methodology of filling them. That's fine to observe, but as Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. So isn't the president ultimately responsible for the policy, whether we agree with it or disagree with it?
Yes, he is. 100%. He's absolutely responsible for it. I think Stephen Miller's motivated by it. Sorry to jump in, Scott, but Stephen Miller's absolutely the person who put this thing in motion, but Donald Trump is responsible for it.
Yeah, we know with this president, one word from the president, people do what they tell him to do, even if he doesn't talk to them directly. Remember, he directed the former Attorney General to do something via social media posts. This is a very unconventional presidency, but he certainly demands from his appointees that they do exactly what he tells them to do, whether they agree or disagree with that policy, and I guess that's his right and responsibility as President of the United States. But I just wanted to make it clear that, I know a lot of people want to make Stephen Miller public enemy number one, and he has great sway over the president, etc. But ultimately, as George W. Bush said, I'm the decider. And Donald Trump is the decider, right? Ben, followed by Brent.
Gary, that was the unstated understatement of the year. This is an unconventional presidency. Gary, glad it's a little understated.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to accommodate our British listeners. Ben, followed by Brent.
Yeah, indeed, very unconventional, very much so. I think, we're talking about immigration today in this room. To start off, something fresh, the birthright citizenship case was just decided. And even though the majority of the court held that there is the Constitution provision, basically they did not overrule the previous case, and then allowed birthright citizenship, if you will. But I think the fact that that case even went up to the Supreme Court, where the constitutional wording really is very, very clear, and there's also not only there was a constitutional amendment to address that issue that derived from Dred Scott, as well as the plain reading of the textual, the words of the Constitution. A lot of the conservative justices should adhere to the originalism or even textualism. Still, this case, the Supreme Court decided to take this case. So I think that tells you that even in such a clear-cut case, where the plain language of the Constitution provides that this administration does not stop there. They still push further to accomplish their really political goal, which I consider is really anti-immigration. And that anti-immigration sentiment is like Gary, like you're saying, it's not just against so-called illegal aliens, or more specifically illegal violent aliens, but rather to legal immigration as well. And on that second point, a couple of days ago, there was another case that came down from the Supreme Court where the court allowed the border control agents to basically take away the great so-called green card holders' rights to enter this country. Instead, they allowed the border control to parole these individuals, meaning that they would have to prove once again, even though they have a green card already, having gone through the whole process of obtaining a green card either by marriage or by work, but the Supreme Court allowed them to really go against, allow border control to detain them, to parole them into the U.S. and then start the removal proceeding if they decide that there's legal grounds, such as crime being committed by these individuals. And that is a very, very substantial departure from what the 8 U.S.C. I think Section 1101, that provision where Congress said we want to have these legal immigrants, the green card holders, to be presumed as resident, as admissible, only if there's exceptions that they have committed crime. And the Supreme Court basically said that, well, they need only to be charged as a crime. The conviction can come later after they have been detained or paroled into the U.S. at the border control. Meaning that at the moment that they entered back into the country, the border control agent can say, "Oh, you were charged with a crime. Therefore, you're considered as committing a crime. Therefore, I'm not going to allow you to come in as a sort of automatic admission into the U.S. I'm going to put you up to. I'm going to demote you into a category that, just like any other aliens, you have to show that you're admissible into the U.S. Because maybe a couple years down the road, you may be convicted of the crime that you're being charged." So I think it's really very bizarre. It's really, I don't think there's any legal basis to make that type of decision. But the court did make that decision. So against legal immigration, this court has been really following the trend of being very hostile to the illegal immigrants. Back to the so-called illegal immigration. Gary, remember you mentioned that Trump is merely doing what he promised during the campaign. Well, the promise he made in the campaign, which presumably voters agreed with, was to remove violent, criminal illegal aliens. And from the past 2 years, the type of individuals that were removed, I think the numbers told us that the majority of the individuals, the illegal aliens, they were not violent at all. There were no crimes being alleged or let alone from convicted. And this type of behavior of interrogating individuals to show their citizenship or immigration status, even though it may sound far-fetched, even though you may say, Gary, that we don't need to carry our IDs, I think actually with the way the ICE has been powered by the Supreme Court, yet by another case, the Los Angeles case that you mentioned, they can literally use the so-called fall criteria to stop people and ask them to show their papers. That's irrelevant to the immigration status. And some of those factors, Gary, is whether you speak foreign language, number one. Number two, whether based on your race or ethnicity, it's outright blatant racial profiling, which we all knew that the court did not allow police to do in terms of driving while black or driving while whatever.
Driving while black.
Now,
driving while existing?
You're allowed to do just that. And depending on where you hang out, if you hang out around Home Depot, like this particular nun, I don't think she was hanging out at Home Depot. Maybe that's not even a necessity anymore. So I think the danger is here. Even though some of us may think, hey, I'm blonde and black, I'm blonde and blue, no big deal. But what about other people who do not look like they are blonde and blue? God forbid, they look like Mexican, Gary. I don't know how your children look, but if they happen to, God forbid, speak Spanish, that could be one of the criteria. The ICE agents could actually say, hey, come, show me your immigration papers. And the reason I'm detaining you is because you speak a different language, specifically Spanish. So I think these are not just, happening to some small segment of the population, quote unquote, the violent illegal aliens. It's really impacting many other people. I would gladly concede that it may not impact again, certain segment of population where they do look like they're not foreigners, but the U.S. is a country of immigrants. Many of us here do look like immigrants. We're not all blonde and blue. So I think the rights that are being affected is going to be cutting across a large population of the U.S. And more importantly, I think the court's decisions have really weakened our democratic structure, giving this administration so much more power and so much less sort of check and balance as the Constitution had intended and the framers had intended. And it's going to be very, very dangerous if this trend continues. And the last thing I want to say is that it's actually ironic that there's so much news about this particular nun being detained and so much outcry. Imagine many other people have encountered the same situation as she has, and congressmen, not three of them, or Democrat or Republican, all come out to save her, if you will. But just because they were not nuns, they were just run-of-the-mill immigrants, if you will. And yet those are happening, on a daily basis. In fact, ICE has gotten so much more money from Congress. We're almost supporting it. All of us, our tax dollars are being used for ICE to allow ICE agents, some of them are not very well trained, to do these type of, I consider really egregious and really threatening our structure, type of a behavior. And I think this is something the trend is going to continue until really maybe a possibility is midterm election. There could be some change in Congress to somehow rein in this executive branch's wild behavior of targeting immigration. And again, one other thing I want to add is that you may think Marshall mentioned this on the fast and easy, maybe not the right way to do it. Well, actually, if it's fast and easy and accomplish a positive outcome, whether economically or politically, there still may be merit for those of us who support Trump or MAGA voters. But guess what? What ICE has been doing, it's not really helping the U.S. to begin with, because legal immigration is being impacted. There are, capable scientists, engineers, and nurses or doctors that are having a hard time coming to the U.S. to help build the economy, even at the lower, sort of less educated.
No, it's not just help build the economy, but it's to take care of our aging population. Our aging population, depending on where you are, there's a good likelihood that somebody from India, somebody from the Philippines, or somebody from Haiti will be your primary care giver. Now, maybe in other parts of the nation, it's somebody from Latin America. I'm not that familiar. But the point is, these very, very tough jobs, taking care of people as we reach our golden years. A lot of Americans aren't willing, ready, and able to do that. So it's not. It's really a problem. I understand it's part of the discussion now in the body politic of Southern Florida. If Haitians are no longer made welcome into the United States, and if their numbers are diminished substantially as a result of government actions, they're concerned about the care of the elderly people in Southern Florida, which we all know there are a lot of old folks there.
Absolutely, it's really counterproductive and counterintuitive. If you look at Europe, we need people. The birth rates are reducing. There's not enough people that are giving birth to young to labor forces. In 20-some years, we do need. See, this is.
I don't think there are enough white South Africans to fill the gap.
I doubt it. Or even other sort of Western European nations. They're not coming to the U.S. in droves. I really think, honestly, even forget politics, liberal, conservative, from a practical perspective, immigrants can be a very positive contribution to the U.S. without violating the laws. We have some great examples of, a big part of our economy, if not the majority, have been helped by having legal immigrants all the way starting in the 1930s or 40s, and even in the 80s and 90s. So it's really to have such a attitude towards the immigrants, whether it's legal or illegal, birthright or not. I think it's really counterproductive. Even if you assuming you're a MAGA voter, you support Donald Trump and the Republicans and some conservative causes, this is really not helping anyone, and it's really weakening our social structure, democratic structure, and it's really costing money. It really is costing money for what? All for the quota of a million individuals to be deported. Where does that even come from? Are there any decisions from the courts that came out that said we do have illegal immigrants, violent ones that are over 1 million people per year? No, it's just a number that whoever, maybe Steve Miller, whoever, pull out of thin air. That is so not. That's so anti-American, right? We accuse other countries of being facetious, making decisions based on ideology, not on facts. Well, that's what the U.S. is doing in terms of what ICE is doing. This is something I think it's really the voters should really wake up and smell the roses, if you will. Otherwise, there won't be any roses to smell because you won't have enough gardeners, agricultural workers, all across various different structures of the economy. We need immigrants. So what ICE is doing is really just is a terrible thing.
I want to revisit, Jay, hang on there, we'll get to you. We do one at a time here. I want to revisit very briefly your initial comment about the birthright decision. My understanding is that the White House really didn't expect that this would, they would prevail in the Supreme Court on the executive's right to eliminate birthright for certain individuals and or certain categories of people. But they wanted to force it into the public forum. And in fact, in an opinion of one written by Justice Kennedy, he almost suggested to the administration that you can still achieve what you want to achieve if you try to legislate a change. It was not a unanimous decision, and a lot of constitutionalists would say, well, this is a no-brainer. This has been, since the inception of our country, the Constitution is unambiguous, and yet several justices dissented, and even Kennedy, who voted with the majority, basically told the president, well, here's another way for you to go at it. So I don't know whether this birthright question is completely out of the political realm, whether it can gain traction in Congress. Personally, I don't think it can. The American public certainly doesn't, according to the polling, agree with the president's attempts to limit birthright possibilities. But there is a pathway that a justice apparently suggested to the executive branch today.
So, Gary, that's a great point. Just a minor clarification. It's Justice Kavanaugh.
Yes, I misspoke. Justice Kavanaugh, thank you.
No, even though it's a 6-3 decision, but it's really 5-4, because only, as you're saying, only 5 justices believe that the Constitution should be read that way, that there's a constitutional right. Kavanaugh did not think that, even though, as I said in the beginning, the constitutional language is very clear. But Kavanaugh, of all people, believed in the breathing, living Constitution, which was a criticism that conservatives lodged against the liberals in their constitutional interpretation, that they would ridicule the liberal justices to say, oh, Constitution is living and breathing, ha ha ha. They would believe that Constitution should not be changed. It doesn't matter, it's at 2026. But because if the words are clear, the text is clear, originalism, textualism, we should read it that way. Evidently, Justice Kavanaugh is in the camp of the so-called former liberal justice legal philosophy now. Be that as it may, I think it is very fragile. again, as a 5-4 majority in terms of birthright citizenship, imagine if Trump has a chance to replace another Supreme Court justice. Let's assume one of the justices in the 5, whether it's the 3 quote unquote liberal one or Chief Justice Roberts or any Barrett, if they actually were to leave, then this case will be gone in terms of there'll be new. This particular court is very much of an activist court. They're not afraid of overruling their previous precedents. Like you just said, there's a birthright citizenship. Not only is clear constitutional language, with the exception only subject to foreign subject to the U.S. jurisdiction as an exception, meaning if you're a foreign diplomat or if you're a soldier fighting in the U.S., if you're an invader and you gave birth, you're the enemy of the U.S. and you're invading the U.S. and you give birth, then your children will not be entitled to that. Other than those very clear exceptions, all people born in the U.S. are U.S. citizens. Now that is going to be read very differently if the Constitutional Court changes. So I think this particular court and this administration may still attempt to use a legislative process, even though that again that should not be upheld if the Constitution is read literally in its text. But who knows? Maybe there's going to be enough congressional changes in the direction that's favor of Trump. Maybe there will be a constitutional amendment, which again, that's fine. If the U.S. decides we're going to amend the Constitution to take away the birthright citizenship, do it. Just like what we did in terms of granting birthright citizenship in response to Dred Scott and the slavery scenario. But this should not be done via a constitution, via a legislative process. Meaning, if there's a majority of Congress that decides we're going to move the U.S. this way, I think the courts should still come out at that time to say no. We don't want a majority tyranny situation happening. If we have a constitution, we still want to read the constitution as it's written, as it was drafted and written. But again, it's a very fragile period. It's a very fragile situation. This court, this composition, and this particular executive branch is very, very active. Trump already said something on Truth Social that he's not going to start that. And he even vetoed, by the way, this is off the point, but he even vetoed the housing bill that majority of Congress passed. So, it's not, we're still in this wild ride. Whichever camp you are in, again, liberal or conservative, MAGA or not, this is a period of time that we have to keep our eyes open and, go to the polls when we can.
Thank you, Ben. We'll go to Barbie, followed by Eve.
Hi. Yeah, I have a few thoughts on this, I guess. One, and the first thought is, why is anyone making a big deal about a nun getting stopped? Because, I don't know if it boggles my mind that because why she's wearing a habit and she's elderly and she was walking just innocently and she is legal, except for the actual vestments. This has been happening for months now to literally thousands of people. And it just blows my mind that when it's something that is symbolic, like an old nun, suddenly it's, oh, this is terrible. Well, where has everybody been? This is nothing new. It's really not. And I'm so glad that they helped her. God bless her. I'm glad she had the representatives, but how many people don't have any kind of visibility or contacts on any level to help them, and they're languishing right now? So, sorry to sound so whatever, but it just really drives me crazy. And I would say that it's not just, you could say it's, moving fast and breaking things. I think it's moving fast and breaking people. And so that is, it's not really, the moving fast, the actions arise out of a philosophy, actions arise out of a state of where people's hearts are at. And this is not a result of just, moving fast and breaking things. This is a result of a deep-rooted policy, a deep-rooted xenophobia that says that anybody that is darker skinned than me is really not welcome here. Let me protect what I have, what I think I have built on my own, a la Megyn Kelly's rant the other night, which was laughable, but anyway, she seems to think that she and her people have built this country. So, that's my first reaction is obviously, as you understand and know, I care deeply. And yes, of course, it's ridiculous and terrible and a violation of all kinds of things that she was arrested, not just detained, not just, questioned, but actually literally detained. Like, that's unbelievable. But I find it almost, I choose to believe the best, but I find it almost, what's the word? It's definitely hypocritical. I don't know. It's just strange to me that there's outrage about this when this is happening every day, all the time. That's one point. And then, the part about our aging population and who is taking care of them, that is definitely a point, a very strong point, Gary, that you were mentioning. I know here in South Florida, the Haitian population is certainly very, very much a part of life here. And it is absolutely true. It was always, TPS was temporary. That's understood. But at the same time, if people have proven to integrate, people have proven to be earning a living honestly, they've proven to be adding quality of life to many, many elderly people here. I see them everywhere. We go to doctor's appointments and everywhere. You have very frequently Haitian caregivers going along with the elderly residents, and it's just services that they need, and they go with them and they give them rides and take them shopping or take them to the doctor, etc. So, it's that. And then the other thing somebody mentioned about population, and what's fascinating with that whole aspect, everything has tentacles and everything has repercussions, because yes, it's true that U.S. population is not going to be able to keep up, but the kicker here is that what people want is they want more white babies, they don't want more brown babies, and they're very explicit about that. And what that's turning into, this is a whole separate subject, I'll only say one thing about it, what that's turning into is tremendous pressure on the white women married to these white men to be trad wives and to have as many babies as possible, quote, before you're even ready for it or before you can afford it, is what they're being told, and that's a direct quote. So it's funny, but there's so many repercussions from all of the strange and very xenophobic policies. And the very last thing I feel I really have been, speaking of TPS and all of this, really devastatingly heartbroken over what's happening in Venezuela. And what is really especially heartbreaking, I know the US is sending aid, etc. But these people that Trump has, I mean, if he went in and supposedly, had a bit of a coup to try and have better people in power, well, these people that are in power, it's being demonstrated, I'm seeing video after video of just how absolutely awful they are being. They're not able, the government in Venezuela is not helping in any way in the recovery efforts. In fact, there's video after video of the military actually looting some of these devastated places while civilians are standing next to them, yelling at them, and trying to dig with their bare hands their people out from under these buildings. And I have not heard one peep out of Trump or anybody, in any way reprimanding or saying anything against the government that he's supporting in Venezuela. I mean, it's the point where they're actually questioning regularly the topos. They're called it's a Spanish word for mole, which is these rescue teams that are highly experienced, that come from Mexico and other places and are there as volunteers, literally making tunnels under the rubble. And you've got the military, supported by Trump, apparently, Delcy's people, literally asking them for their papers over and over again, like twice a day. The same people are being asked by the same guards for their, and they're told, well, that's what we're told we have to do. So that's, again, a result of our convenient interventionism. So we went in there and we did a few things, but it was all a lie. It was nothing to do with democracy or helping the people. So this immigration question is complex. It's complex and it has a lot of implications in a lot of areas. And I really would love people to have some integrity when it comes to this issue and be consistent with it. Because if someone's being beat up next door every single day and you know about it, but one day the person that gets beat up is an old nun and that's when you get mad, you know, you've got to question yourself and your own standings.
So, Sister Letty, as they call her, first name's Letitia, but they call her Sister Letty, is 56. So I don't know whether 56 is considered old today.
No, well, not to me, but I think to some of our younger people here that people do think that she's old.
Well, okay, but to me, anybody under the age of 40 is a kid. Is that
Exactly.
fair? You know, I don't know.
I'm right there with you, Garrett. And I
You know, so it's a question of perspective, and I understand that. As I pointed out in the opening salvo, the news cycle is such that there's so many things popping up that supplant things that were so important to us yesterday that they are forgotten today because another crisis is thrown in front of us. So we were all over Epstein, we were all over immigration, we were all over this, we were all over that. Lately it's been Iran. And now, as a result of this, we have opportunity, I guess, to focus on the immigration issue again. You're right, and as I pointed out,
it's really interesting to me how most people will fall into categories based on their experiences. Like, specifically with jobs, if you have XYZ job, then you are more likely to have another certain type of job.
I said if it's happening to the sister, a lot of people we just don't hear about.
If you have XYZ job, then you are more likely to have another certain type of job. For example, I'm a sex worker now, but my first job ever was a daycare teacher, and I loved working with kids, but then I transitioned into working with elderly people with disabilities, and then I worked as a CNA, and I was going to become a nurse. So the bulk of my jobs I had growing up were caregiving jobs, and I've heard that this is a common connection among people.
And I have to remember
I'm not sure how caregiving jobs can lead
not
to
everybody,
sex work
obviously
or
the algorithms, etc. Not everybody sees everything, and maybe some people are not aware that this is happening.
Well, I wasn't aware of this nonsense in Venezuela where the rescue workers are being harassed by the military. What kind of bullshit is that?
Not only that, let me tell you one other thing about Venezuela. I was about to sign up.
Did I misspeak again? Did I not say
No,
Venezuela?
you're 100% correct.
Okay, I thought I misspoke.
No, I just want to add one thing, just so you know, that the other thing that just today happened in Venezuela was that they have somebody down there created an app for those of us who are bilingual, fully able to translate, to be able to volunteer, even remotely, to translate for so many international workers that are there trying to help into Spanish and back and forth, right? So I had saved it, I went back to sign up for this, and when I went back, the notice was up that site had been taken down by the creator, because what was happening was the government had somehow gotten a hold of the database and was now harassing the local Venezuelans that were also volunteering to interpret in these situations, because of being paranoid that there's spies infiltrating, etc., etc. So he literally had to shut the site down.
Hey,
So
hey,
now
hey, let the people die. It's an unintended consequence to protect the homeland from the spies.
Yep. Yep.
Oh my, get your priorities straight here, Barbie. Let the people die so that we don't get any spies in Venezuela who are crawling on their hands and knees, digging through tunnels. What's the matter with these people running that government?
Well, but according to Trump, they're doing a great job. I mean, he just recently praised them, so.
Okay, well then if the president says it, it must be true. Thank you. I stand admonished and corrected. Thank you, Barbie. Agent followed by
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll try to build off what a previous speaker was saying regarding, let's take a look at the Nun incident. Let's take a look at Venezuela. It's interesting. I just looked up, and 150 million U.S. This administration, this evil, corrupt administration, gave $150 million to faith-based charities, including the Catholic Church, probably very strongly including the Catholic Church. I don't have the exact numbers for you.
It's Catholic Charities, which is a wing of Catholic Church, but it's
right.
All Catholic Charities.
It's one of them, yeah. I know it is a collection of faith-based relief organizations got the $150 million, and then a lot more was, there's teams from Fairfax, at least 150 trained rescuers, dogs, etc. So $300 million total was sent by the administration to try to relieve the situation, I guess, or help rescue people under rubble and so forth in Venezuela by the deeply corrupt Trump administration, who, yes, at the same time, I guess, one of, I'm not sure how many ICE agents were involved, some of these federal officers who arrested a nun. We can assume, I'm assuming that it was completely unjustified and in error, at least from a legal standpoint. And, she'll be able to sue, I hope, and get some recompense for the damages of being falsely arrested. But, as far as like attacking the church and all these things, I mean, I think it's sort of a mixed bag, we could say, this week. And they're certainly leaning heavily and putting significant financial resources, government resources, through the church to help the people of Venezuela in this last week. Yeah, as far as but if you zoom out, just let's talk about the immigration. I think that there's a clear mandate. First of all, there are laws written that you're not allowed, there's a series of laws, various laws, that you're not allowed to be in the country without some form of documentation, right? A visa, a granting of amnesty that has not been canceled, or citizenship, a green card, various things. And I'm sure that officers empowered or directed to force these laws make mistakes sometimes, and I think this is a problem. And this shouldn't happen. We should reduce this.
It's Title 8, Section 1325, which is what you're looking for.
Thanks, I didn't have that memorized. That's really good. So, point being, I agree with all the speakers that we need to do a better job. We need to do this correctly. We need to minimize false positives, minimize false negatives as well. We need to get everyone we arrest needs to be, basically, if you're setting out to enforce the law, then you should aim to get 100% of the criminals or people in violation detained and deported or processed, let's say, in as orderly and humane and efficient a process as possible. And you should have no mistakes, no false positives, no people arrested or even spoken to who are not in violation, if you can achieve that. There are different ways. I think there are companies like one of Peter Thiel's companies that he sponsored, Palantir, is probably helping with this. I know it's very expensive. There would be other legislative ways of requiring more documentation and things like this, or just more touch points and proofs that could be offered. And so national ID comes up, and a lot of people, both the left and the right, for various ideological reasons, are against things like national ID. When I tried to travel in China, everyone had to have their national ID. You had to go through readers. It was very efficient for everyone who had their national ID. I didn't have a national ID because I was a foreigner, but I had a passport. There was no way I was going to be boarding a train or anything without a passport. And I have to go get it manually checked and so forth. They check my visa status. If those things are out of order, I can guarantee you I wouldn't have lasted very long in China. That's a country that's like, decided that efficiency and getting everything correct, minimizing the false positives and the false negatives and getting, 100% accuracy, that's one of their real design goals there, and they're willing to implement the systems necessary. I would like people to have holistic, when they speak about this, at least be willing to not just say, oh, this is so bad, isn't this so bad? That's what Scott Adams used to call like a half opinion. It's like, okay, you really haven't thought about this whole thing from start to finish, and like, is your goal to just destroy the system and tear it down and make it non-functional? Do you want to live in a third worldist kind of way that things are just, that actually corruption is the system? Or do you want to design things efficiently and properly so that everything works smoothly and correctly? And I just tend to not hear that with the people who focus on the emotional, things of, oh, this person got, I agree, it's like, it's pretty sloppy. It doesn't look good. I think it's a disgrace, if I'm honest. But I think we should really talk about systemic ways we can make things work properly. Thank you very
We have a problem in our nation is when we identify a problem, which of course people know exists until the enemies of the state, meaning reporters, bring it out into light, and then suddenly it's gotten the attention of the government that we try to fix the problem without looking at the unintended consequences.